Okay, welcome to the Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee Operating Budget Subcommittee. Today is March 19th, 2025, and if anybody is recording it, please let us know. And so we'll call the roll. Chris King,
Here.
Chris Lozon,
Here.
and Tom King.
Here.
Tom, you need to smile. You look like a mugshot there. Yay, that's better. Okay, I guess what we're here to do is to organize ourselves for the subcommittee reports. And for those of you who are new, like Chris King and Tom Keene, we generally have a sections called General Fund. Then of course, we've got the schools, which is the big 60% of the operating budget, the enterprise funds and fixed costs. And then we have alternated between DPW and police, which Chris Lozon did the police 2 years in a row, I believe. So I'll open it up for discussion and for your selection.
So how many sections in all is it, Lillian?
We generally have 5 sections. And typically what I have done in the past is to double up and do enterprise funds and fixed costs. But if anybody has a dying desire to do either of those, I'll be happy to relinquish them.
Well, my recollection from last year is these things, there's sort of a form we have and we kind of just, adjust it for the next year. So
Exactly.
It strikes me that expertise is valued here. In other words, you should continue to do those sections.
Yeah, what I will do is to share with you. Last year, the school section was very, very problematic because
I agree.
the person who, as you know, the person
Yep.
who was assigned to it waxed poetic about what education was all about and forgot all the figures. So Chuck and I were breathing bullets at the end. So it would be nice to have somebody who has a very good experience with schools, Tom.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
I'm happy
Chris?
to do DPW and police again.
Okay.
And I would be happy to do, I know, you did Lillian, you did the enterprise funds and fixed costs, but I'd be happy to do that. That has
You want to
interest to
do
me.
both of those?
Sure. Enterprise and fixed costs, right?
All right.
So what does that leave us?
That leaves us with general fund at the beginning, which I will be happy to do, and then our comments and conclusions at the end, which I'll also be happy to do.
Okay.
No, I think that Mark sent out last year's operating budget report, and I would suggest that you look at the one for 24 as well, because the formats are slightly different.
Right. Mark, did you send those out? Could you send both of those out as Word versions?
I just sent your one from last year out about a half an hour ago. I'll send
Okay, I
the
haven't
previous
seen it.
years out after this meeting, so you'll all have both of them.
Okay.
So I guess the key question is when we will get the town manager's proposed operating budget so that we can begin working on this.
So let's see. In a revised calendar, he will be submitting the recommended operating budget to the council on May 14th. And so, we might be able to get that to you 2 weeks ahead of that date. So let's shoot for May 1st. And then we can push CFAC's submission of that budget, of your report, all the way back, I think, to the end of May, because the council doesn't meet until June 5th for public hearings. So I think we can give you to the end of May, right before the first public hearing, so they'll have an opportunity to read your report prior to the public hearings beginning.
Because prior to seeing the recommended budget, all we're doing is wordsmithing here.
That's right. And you'll have the good news. Well, the good part about it is, Tom, for you especially, you'll have the school department budget soon, because the school committee has to adapt their budget and submit it to the town manager by April. Let's see, April 2nd. And so they'll be submitting their adopted budget to the town manager by April 2nd. So you'll have the school department budget. You've been provided the general fund revenue projections.
Right.
We're working on the enterprise fund pro formas. We should have those done soon and provide those to you ahead of time.
Okay.
So you'll get all the bits and pieces of the budget. It's going to come to you in pieces. It's not, but the book itself, the town manager's recommended budget with the big book, that's not going to be ready until that May 14th time frame.
Okay.
But we can give you the major components that are going to be included in that as we go along here.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think Gareth shared the updated revenue projections with the committee last week, and you'll get the school department next Monday night.
So the schools are presenting their operating budget this coming Monday.
Yeah.
So that we'll have that. And we'll get the general fund figures are sort of wandering in.
Yeah, they're going to wander because we're just starting our meetings with department heads next week to go over the commission requests. And so, yeah, it will be a few weeks before we iron out, what the changes to the proposed budget will be for next year.
Yeah. Chris, since you're doing the DPW and police,
Yes.
do you want them to come to one of our CFAC meetings?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful if they did. I think we usually do that.
Would it be possible for us to schedule them for the 14th of April?
Both? You want to do one? Or do you want to do both in the same night? That might be a little much.
Well, let's just, Chris, your call.
I think one at a time might be better, but I'm not opposed to both of them in the same night. Just, I don't know how long that'll go. I mean, the police one shouldn't be too involved, I wouldn't think, but I don't know what they have going on.
Yeah, you have you're meeting 4/14 and 4/28.
Right.
We'll I'll see if they both can be available on the 14th.
Okay.
Okay.
And if we can't make it on the 14th, then we'll have to have them in on the 28th.
Okay. So that takes care of all of our housekeeping. I guess we won't really know how to schedule our subcommittee meetings until we begin working on our sections.
Right. I mean, we've got meetings scheduled, but we don't know if we'll actually need to meet then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the next two meetings really make any sense, until we start getting some information.
Exactly.
If I have questions, let's say on the fixed costs, because I'd like to understand where that data comes from and who's in charge of the data. Mark, can I come to you out of committee and just ask those questions?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I can do it via email so that we have documentation of the questions, Q&A, just so that we can keep track of those Q&A and any knowledge that is learned from my questions for the rest of the committee.
Right.
So the next time we will meet as a subcommittee then will be April 9th, Wednesday, April 9th.
We
Is-
probably don't need to meet there because we won't have anything by then.
Well, you'll have the school department budget, you have the general fund revenue budget. I mean, you have those pieces. Yep.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
So April 9th, then we're looking at,
April 9.
right, okay.
Okay. Oh, Tom, if you need any extra help, you can just get in touch with Chris Dwelly, who's the finance guy for schools. He's
Okay,
very, very helpful. Okay.
and is it, I don't know how much I'll be able to get, and I'll try to do what I can prior to our April 9th meeting. Mark, is it okay simply to circulate a draft to other members of the subcommittee?
yes.
Okay, so I would just circulate a red line. Obviously, the numbers will be from last year, so ignore those. But I'm going to go on and on about how wonderful education is.
Everybody
Well,
needs one.
Well, you do know that the school section is the longest and most precise part of our report.
I do have a question. Why is it 60%? Is that state law? Is that
It's an agreement that we came up with years ago to provide some predictability in funding, because prior to that, it was like throwing a piece of meat in a lion cage and watching people fight, and departments were just at odds with one another. There wasn't a cohesive atmosphere at all with department heads working with one another. So, that's one of the reasons that we came up with it, was to provide, to eliminate the infighting over resources, to provide some predictability for future funding. And it was pretty close to what the allocation was at that time.
okay?
And so we wanted to stick with that. So that we would again have that predictability in future funding. So, because some years, you could see it go 80-20 in one direction, 90-10, 50-50, and it just the atmosphere that created was not doing anybody any good. It was really tough to get a budget.
Seems like
Just
a lot of
listening
wasted
to
time.
Listening to the school presentation that we had a few weeks ago, though, it sounds to me like they're looking for more than 60%.
Absolutely. And other departments are looking for more than 40%.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's,
Can't we just give them 120 and everyone's happy?
I haven't figured that out yet. I'm not trying. The numbers
Only if you
don't
want
add
your
up.
taxes to go up.
When I can get that math to work, I'll do it.
Do we know what our peers are at in terms of 60-40 budgets? Is that pretty common across, let's say, Massachusetts and towns the same size?
I would say it's going to be unique to every municipality as to how they decide to share their growth and revenues.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah, I'm sure they all have different ways of doing it. So, yeah, but we are facing, this as you've heard from the school department's presentation, you'll hear next Monday night. They're facing the elimination of a number of positions. They're using savings to balance the budget because of, mainly due to the expiration of ESSER funds,
Yeah,
which were part of the ARPA stimulus, federal ARPA stimulus package that provided millions of dollars to school districts. And, we brought in a lot of extra positions in education which were paid for out of those funds. And now that those funds have expired, you need a new revenue source to backfill,
Yeah.
and we don't have that. And so that's the main driver for the elimination of positions.
Yeah.
Plus, they're also trying to, reduce their dependency on reserves to balance their operating budget, which is, what you need to do. The good news is that we have healthy reserves right now. And I'll provide you those reserve balances. They're there for times like this. It provides you a mechanism for a softer landing when you are in a multiple year reduction in force type of situation. You don't have to do everything at once. If you didn't have the reserves, you'd have to make all these cuts at once. But this gives you the opportunity to more strategically put in place what those reductions will be, offers the opportunity to see if revenues will enhance in other areas in future years. State aid changes could perhaps come along again. And so, yeah, it's one of the reasons reserves are there. And right now we have healthy reserves.
What is the impact of the Chapter 70? This
No
coming,
increase.
no,
No increase.
no increase.
Just over $100,000 under the governor's proposed
Wow.
budget. So in fact, our overall state aid, when you net state assessments against the state revenue, we're actually down $1 million because our assessments went up $1 million and basically revenue stayed the same. So that's causing, there's $1 million hole in the budget there. We have a pension assessment that's up over $1 million. We have 6.5% increase in health insurance. We have Cape Cod Tech's regional school assessments up 13%. And so all of that has to be paid for essentially with local revenues, property taxes, and any growth in local receipts. We're looking at about a $5 million increase in property taxes next year between Proposition 2.5 and new growth, and about $3 million in local receipts for a total of $8 million. But when you net all of those fixed cost increases, Chris, that we'll talk about, out against that, it leaves us just under $5 million to split between municipal and school operations. And, we've got collective bargaining agreements in place for 2026. They have to be provided for. And the expiration of grant funding for the school department, and those ESSER grants. And so, yeah, it's just, costs increases are escalating more than revenue growth at this time. And it's, so we're in a position where we have to strategically think about how to implement reductions that will have a limited amount of negative impact to the
through all of and I don't mean to get into detail on the school, Tom, this is your deal, but all of the presentations that I've gone through, I still don't have a good understanding, and maybe I missed it, of what the student population looks like going into the future. Is there a bubble or a negative bubble in student population?
So my recollection from last year was that the student population growth is relatively moderate, if not flat. Is that right, Mark?
Yes.
But the thing that was really striking to me was the number of at-need and special needs students has just
gone way up
dramatically.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's a good question as to why that demographic changed, but it's clearly there. And that does add on a lot of cost. It may just be the parents are getting smarter about figuring out what to get their kids, but it's definitely higher.
I mean, I'm thinking about pre-K through 3, and then 4 through 6, or 4 through 5, and then middle school, and then high school. Where is the demographics, and how does that bubble? Is there a huge bubble at the pre-K through 3 that's going to propagate through the schools, or is it opposite?
It's the opposite.
That's what I think too, is that it's opposite. There's less younger kids in the school, and we're kind of reducing the total population in the school over time. Will that change? I don't know, but
there's several factors at work, and I think it's worth looking at this year.
Mm,
One is that you have the demographic collapse. You have, quite frankly, people are having smaller families and not having families.
mhm.
And that's nationwide. That's not just Cape Cod or even Massachusetts. The second that we're going to have to puzzle over is what's going to go on in terms of the anti-immigration, frenzy that's going on right now, and how's that going to affect our schools? Because I will bet you that there are many non-U.S. citizens in our schools.
Well, those are
And
good questions to ask the superintendent on Monday.
and those are going to be my questions. Yeah.
You bet. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other things we might want to take a look at as the subcommittee is the trend in students, Barnstable students enrolling in other school districts through
Which
either
was mentioned in our
choice,
meeting. Yeah.
charter schools, regional tech schools. I think what this school committee is trying to implement now is a program and a curriculum that will in a facility renovation program that will attract some of those students back into Barnstable, because charter school students, we get assessed through the state for those. We get assessed from Cape Cod Tech. We get assessed through school choice program, and we're seeing increases in enrollments to all those out of district options.
Well,
It's competitive now. It's a very competitive environment for education.
and full disclosure, my expertise in schools is a large part because I've been involved in charter schools. So
Mhm.
at both pre-K level and older.
Can a student decide to sign up to go to Yarmouth instead of Barnstable
Under school choice, they can.
under school choice? And I mean, I did see the school choice in there, and I asked the question a little bit as a Mickey the Dunce kind of a question. I wanted to understand, is that something that a lot of students do in Barnstable? Is especially on the fringe towns, go to schools on the other side of the border, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's what if you ask that question of the school department, I think what they'll tell you, and from what I've heard in the past, is that most of the students who participate in the school choice program, they mapped them, right? And you look at the map where they live, and it's usually along the border,
Sure.
close to the border of a neighboring town, whether it be Mashpee, Sandwich, or Yarmouth.
Right.
And,
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. And
It'll be an interesting one. And yes, I'm going to be focusing on exactly those kinds of things, Chris.
yeah, and I mean the question that I had is how many? What are we talking about? Are we talking about hundreds, thousands,
Couple
or
hundred, yeah.
a couple
Yeah.
hundred? Okay.
Yeah, if you go to Desi's website, there's a history of school choice enrollments by district, by sending district and receiving district. We do get some students in. I think just over 100 students come to Barnstable schools from neighboring towns, but we send out twice as many as those that come in.
Hmm. Okay. I mean, these are all questions that are good questions. And how do we help our school superintendent make our schools more competitive in this environment? That's all.
Okay.
All right, great.
Sorry to expound on schools.
No, these discussions help all of us better understand as we get into the analysis.
It's worth at least 60% of our time.
Okay, any other questions or issues that you want to bring up?
No.
Okay, so we're going to have the school presentation this coming Monday, and then we will have our first official subcommittee meeting on April 9th. We will have the schools, and we can begin discussing it, and we'll have some of the general fund figures as well. And then on the 14th, we will try to have DPW and police, and if that's not enough time, we'll spill over to the 28th, right, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Anything else to come before the committee? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion to adjourn. Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Do you need
Thank you
Aye,
very much.
Chris.